Hi, I'm Shannon Berg, and welcome to the Communicators Lab. And on this video cast, I talk with interesting people who have ideas and perspectives and knowledge that can help us all be better communicators. And today, I'm super excited because I have Michael Dauphinee with us. Yay! Hi, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Shannon. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Mike, you are a coach. You're an executive advisor. You help companies and CEOs all over the world engage with their employees, be more productive, grow in their own leadership. You're an author, you climb mountains, you do all kinds of crazy stuff. You've been my coach for a long time. And you've seen me through a lot of ups and downs in my own career. So I feel like you should have stock in my company at this point.
I'll take some. That's a good bet for me. I'll take that. I believe in that.
So, okay, so share with everybody a little bit more about who you are. And I want to hear what you talked about last week on our webinar about the 4 things that people are looking for in leaders right now. But first and foremost, what do you do?
Yeah, so I worked for Hewlett Packard for 6 years, and then when I turned 30, decided that wasn't the end all be all of my life and walked away. So that's going to be what, 16 years ago, I think, actually coming up here pretty quick, that I walked away, and I spent a year using a tool called the Clifton Strengths Finder to help organizations understand their natural talents and abilities and how to leverage them into strengths. And what I thought would be a 1-year kind of give back to the world in general became a much bigger project when one of my former clients called and said, "Hey, do you do consulting and coaching?" And that was, like I said, 16 years ago. And I spend the majority of my time helping, and you know this, I mean, I often say it's a matter of helping people who believe they have potential but are scared they won't reach it. And so my job is to help them understand how to use their strengths to reach that potential and ultimately have them get out of their own way. Because that's the biggest thing, right? Is how do we get out of our own way?
Who was that first client that said you should do consulting, by the way?
Oh, my first client was a guy by the name of Michael Brennan, who is the CEO. So. That's how we originally met, right? Were you a contractor for them at the time, back in the day?
Yep, they were my client.
United Way for Southeast Michigan. He heard me do a workshop. I did a workshop and then did a 101, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you come in and start with strengths?" And then we worked together to build the high potential, high performer program, do a talent management program. And I basically cut my teeth those first 3 years in operationalizing. I mean, so many times we'll take tools and assessments like DISC, Myers-Briggs, predictive index, but when you can actually operationalize it into a strategy of how do we do development intentionally, it has a lot of power. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember seeing you actually in the United Way for Southeastern Michigan offices. And do you remember that big glass
glass conference room?
Yeah. I remember, I think, who is this guy?
Workshops in a fishbowl, I mean. Workshops in a fishbowl.
That was the first time I heard you speak about strengths. I had never heard of it before. And I've done, like a lot of people and like a lot of leaders, the DISC, the emotional IQ, all the different Myers-Briggs.
A lot of them. Yep.
Strengths is the best for sure.
Yeah, it's this ability to really operationalize it, because that's what I think we want to think about, is that we have naturally occurring patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that are happening all the time. What if we could identify them, capitalize on them, and then use them to navigate through difficult times?
Yep. So who do you work with now, Mike? And since that time, cutting your teeth with the United Way for Southeastern Michigan and Detroit, what kind of work have you done and enjoyed doing?
It's like any good consultant, you have to one of my favorite phrases is follow the relationship. And so you always build that first referral to the next referral. And so, at that point, it got led to one of the big 3 automotive companies. It's okay to say I did some consulting for Jeep for a number of years. And then that led to some NFL teams and small businesses, and just kind of really trying to keep that balance of, it's been all over the board, but anywhere a team leader is really trying to reinvent, re-engage, or reimagine their team, I've been asked to come in and kind of walk alongside that leader. And it's been normal things like automotive and industry and manufacturing, but also interesting things like I did some work for the British Embassy in Afghanistan as well as Nigeria, trying to do leadership development for basically the police in fragile environments. And so there's those extremes, and then there's nonprofits like United Way. And so it's been quite a collection. But at the same time, I'm really passionate, and you and I have talked about this before, especially in this season, no matter what level you're at, no matter the size of the company, is that human beings, especially if you are not the team leader, are more dependent than ever on their team leaders in uncertainty. And so how your home life, the questions, the fear, the anxiety, how you're processing your day-to-day is really impacted by team leaders. And so anything I can do to help kind of support them in this season, I think does good for everyone, not just team leaders.
I remember when you told me the first time you told me this, and it always stuck with me, that I think it was you, the number one relationship outside of a spouse affects the way we feel on a day-to-day basis is our manager report relationship.
There was a survey that Gallup did. I don't know if it was in well-being or maybe it was strengths-based leadership. I can't remember, but they had a survey, and I'm going to botch the stat, but it's pretty high, so dig it up if you need to. But Gallup was asking people to identify the greatest impact on their overall well-being other than their spouse or partner. And 67% of Americans said it's their direct report supervisor. So the person that has the greatest impact on their overall well-being other than their spouse or partner is their team leader. And so, like, I've said before, it's this idea of if you have people following you, 67% of Americans believe that the power of life and death, so to speak, is in your hands. And the stability of their life and the confidence they have about their pay, their support, who's advocating for them, that's in the team leader's hands. And that's a huge impact.
Yeah. So let's talk about the recent Gallup research that you've been talking about, what people need from leaders right now, because we have a lot of leaders that view this video cast.
Yep. And so it's interesting right now to think about when it comes to leadership, we often think we need to be visionary or we need to be superheroes. That's based on an old leadership principle called the man, which is not, it's actually called the man principle, which we know is not accurate because many times they're women.
Yeah, that's that's a whole other episode. That's
a whole other episode. There is an actual principle called the man. But it's not even the man or the woman. Gallup asked followers, they took 20,000 followers who identified themselves as being subordinate to a team leader, what it is they want in their leaders. And it was a different approach because usually we're researching leaders to see what they know best. And to ask followers, really, what's it like to be on the receiving end of these people is a different conversation. And that's more true than ever before. And what they found, though, the 4 things that every follower wants from a leader was a little surprising. It wasn't the words they typically would think of. But it came out, we think of vision, we think of stability, all those other pieces. It actually was 4 beats, and I'll kind of hit each one. Trust, compassion, stability, and hope. So trust, compassion, stability, hope. And right now, more than ever before, there's certain things that are happening. It's leaders that are stepping into this with not only their staff, but also their clients. Like there's an element of your clients are kind of like wanting this from you as well. They want these 4 beats of trust, compassion, stability, and hope. Yep. And I mean, just to kind of walk through just kind of a couple of beats of those is that when it comes to trust, you need to share the good news and the bad news together. Like you can't candy coat it. Honor them enough to tell them the truth.
I've said this before. If your employees are, end up getting laid off, it shouldn't be shocking to them.
Shouldn't be a surprise.
And it doesn't mean that, every day you stand up and say, oh, it's so bad, it's so awful. Mm-hmm. But if you're being honest, they should know that there's challenges that you're facing financially.
And you know this more than most. I mean, this is your job in your life, is that, well, a good rule of thumb is you should take as long, if not more, to make a plan for communicating the decision as you do in making the decision.
Yes.
The communication plan should be should be focused on equally as the decision made. And this is especially true, is that how are you being intentional about telling the good news and bad, but how are you delivering it? That's a critical issue right now to build trust.
Yeah, because the people who are left behind who remain in a scenario like the one I described, they need to know that there's integrity in what you say. Yes. And they just watched all of that happen. So can they trust you?
So building that trust, that relationship, they can depend on that. That's going to be key. Also compassion. There's a lot of great articles right now talking about how we've worked really hard in society to compartmentalize between our employees' home lives and our professional lives. But the fact is, I have to care about their home life because their home life is their work life now. Yeah. You can't separate out the fact that how is their lack of childcare going with the fact they still have meetings and they're working till 9 p.m. at night. And showing compassion and also grace for the human situation and being aware of it. When I ask team leaders, I'm like, hey, what is the greatest personal concerns of your staff? And they can't tell me. That's an alarm bell. Yeah. They need to get better at listening as well as asking questions.
Yeah. I feel like that myth of the work-life balance, like there are these 2 things on a teeter-totter that you try to maintain equilibrium between. I feel like the myth of that just blew up because now we see that we're all whole people. Our work life is happening at home now. So it's clearer than ever but it's always been that way, regardless of where we're physically at. I mean, the idea that we have a work life and we have a home life and we have a spiritual life and they're sort of separate is a fallacy. I mean,
that's a fallacy. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a story we tell ourselves. I guess the next one's stability. So trust, compassion, stability is the third one. And stability is in the midst of chaos, we need to be leaders who can call out, this is what is stable. Okay, here's the thing. This is the stability factor. So here's what we do know. We do know that here's where we are. We do know that this is the finances we have. This is how long we can have you on our staff. Also, when it comes to process, one of the key elements is jettison anything not critical. Show that you understand the situation that the team is in and really trim your systems down to what are the key systems. Instead of going, we're going to be the exact same team we were in the office, but at home, we're not working. And this could be things like technology. Like one of the key pieces when it comes to emotional engagement of employees that Gallup has found, that's like the low-hanging fruit for organizations. You want to improve employee engagement, make the tools work. VPNs, computer systems, the ability to digitally send information. If you're not having a digital plan, it's going to make your team unstable because they don't know, can I depend on my tools to get the job done? So streamlining systems, digital tools, a real focus on that, and be clear about, hey, there are some things that aren't changing. These are the things you can dependably count on, like dependable check-ins, dependable meetings. This is the information, business information that's dependable. So,
yeah, and I feel like the other thing that has to be dependable are your values. And a lot of times what happens in crisis scenarios is, unfortunately, values end up on the chopping block because people perceive that threat to their economic viability, and they start to make decisions solely guided by that instinct to survive when there are values right in front of you that say, this is who we are, and that has to be trustworthy. Your employees have to be able to count on you to act and speak and behave in ways that are consistent with those values. They have to be dependable.
Totally. Trust, compassion, stability, and the last one, hope.
Yeah.
And this is where there's that space for vision. This is where it's a matter of kind of highlighting what is possible, kind of saying, like, talking and being able to communicate beyond the moment you're in, talking beyond when this changes, here's what's going to happen, kind of beyond the space and the moment and the time and the challenge we're in. A lot of organizations right now are actually realizing that they're going to need, as office places either reopen or don't. If you're not reopening a workspace in the next 90 days, some people have been kind of holding back going, hey, this is all just temporary, don't worry. Others are realizing it's going to be longer. At some point, there's this idea of doing almost like instead of an onboarding, like a reboarding, kind of like this understanding of almost like you're relaunching your team, do this thing of, hey, so this is our new day, this is our new reality. Let's recommit to vision. And when it comes to this piece, when it comes to hope, within Gallup has a book that came out last year called It's the Manager. And it's based on all the research that they have done regarding the importance of team leaders when it comes to engagement and performance. And there was something fascinating they found. They basically surveyed all these new employees that had recently started jobs, and they were measuring their employee engagement. Two things they discovered. One, an employee's engagement in their workforce usually is peak in the first 6 months, and then it drops to whatever level it's at. So you have 6 months to get them, and then engagement drops. But within that 6 months, there's 5 questions that every employee is asking when they're starting a new job. And while you may not be starting a new job, or your team may not be a new team, if this is a new reality, something to consider. These 5 questions. What do they believe here? Much to your point. What do they believe? Mm-hmm. What is my role? What are my strengths? Who are my partners? What's my future? What do they believe? What is my role? Do my strengths fit my role? Who are my partners? What's my future? Those core elements of those 5 questions, right now when it comes to hope, if we kind of make sure as leaders, the employees are getting this, they know what our values are. They're clear on their jobs. They're hearing me talk about their strengths. I'm pushing and helping and facilitating collaboration on the team. And I'm talking about the fact they have a future in this company to the best of our ability. You're more likely to see engagement go up because these are the questions of uncertainty that employees are asking.
Yeah, and I feel like if you have all of those things firing, there's actually an opportunity right now for people to think and do things outside of the norm and sort of be freer to, innovate. And that's maybe a good segue or a clumsy segue. Yeah. But I want to talk about permission. I want to talk about your book that you're working on. And you and I have talked a lot about this too, because what we've seen in recent weeks is, companies like being able to pivot on a dime. And some of these companies are big manufacturing companies that in normal times, it can't make these kind of changes quickly. All of a sudden they're manufacturing personal protective equipment. They're doing things that would normally take so long to get clearance to do. And now all of a sudden they're innovative and they're engaging in new ways. So tell us a little bit about that idea. You called it like of knowledge. I love that.
Yeah. There's this whole idea that, this is a painful season, but it's also a powerful one. And so I'm right now working on a proposal and kind of talking through with clients and framing up this idea of what I'm calling the power of permission, how people, places, and unexpected events can help us get out of our own way. And it's this idea that one of the greatest barriers ultimately to us achieving something or making changes or innovating our life is the lack of permission we give ourselves, because we don't see ourselves in that framework. And so I didn't coin this, but someone else did. If you look in the research, but there's this idea of the curse of knowledge, is that it's impossible for human beings, once they have learned something, to go back to a state in which they didn't know it. And so we become very fixed. I think Carol Dweck talks about this in her book, Mindset, on the fixed versus growth mindset. And we don't even realize that we're fixed. We just see the world a certain way. And so in fact, you and I had talked about this. If Ralph Lauren had suddenly announced that he was going to stop making home goods and instead make personal protective equipment and masks 6 months ago, we would have all been like, what are you? That's insane. But in this moment where there's a need for masks and there's a need for them made locally and things like that, that suddenly companies that are known for home goods and clothing are making personal protective equipment.
Yeah.
But even as us individuals, like you said, what if we reconceived of our own lives? What if people like yourself who are in public relations, they're in communication, truly, and are going, I'm not just a consultant advisor and someone providing service. I can create content that changes the world. I can redirect the frames. How do we give ourselves permission to say this moment is a global moment of permission to think differently about our lives and our teams?
Yeah. For me, that was when things got to be, certainly there's still uncertainty and there are still economic challenges. Things got to be a little more fun when I feel like I embraced that permission. And I said, well, I'm going to build an app and I'm going to do some things that, I've been thinking about doing, wanting to do, and now all of a sudden feel doable. And it's that permission is in the air.
And like you said, it's something freeing about it. I remember I was reading an article that Google, when the lockdowns began happening at Google, one of the sales leaders called together his team and said, your motto right now is serve, don't sell. How can we serve, not sell? Now, your view on Google, whatever it may be, there is something to be said for that, because that leader in that moment had the courage to go, let's be a part of something bigger. Let's reframe what your priorities are, because this moment gives us permission to do that. And I think we leave benefit to ourselves and the world on the table if we don't seize this right now and kind of say, how do we do that?
And the funny thing is, the beauty of all of that is that by serving, you actually are supporting your efforts to sell, because people want to be able to trust you. They want to do business with people who they feel like are doing good things, are giving back, are being more than just a money-making entity. And so doing those things now builds goodwill, and it all comes back to you at some point. I really do believe that. Okay. So when's your book coming out?
I'm hoping I'm shopping it right now. So I'm hoping it'll be less than 9 months, but you know how publishing can be.
Somebody was just telling me about book writing being like, you put so much into it, and it is, for most people, not a money-making venture at all.
Not at all.
And I just really, and then you have to really, it comes out, and then the work just begun, really. You have to get out there and really.
But it's more about, do you really give a message you want to share with the world? Do you have something you want to help and serve? Because if it's anything else, the statistics on the number of books that are actually money-making is shocking, So, but yeah, this idea of permission, I wanted to share it because I think if we can start to give ourselves permission and keep pushing the limits of our boundaries and our curse of knowledge, as we say, then I think some really phenomenal things are possible.
So you do something that's not at all about writing books or coaching or consulting. And I think it is about pushing boundaries. You take normal, respectable, unsuspecting leaders and you drag them up mountains, right?
Yes. A number of years ago in 2013, I think it was, during a moment of just exhaustion of travel was like, I grew up hiking and I haven't been in the woods and I should go on a trek. And there's a much crazier story that ended up it's been in a couple of different books I've written, but I ended up on a one-on-one solo trek through the mountains of Patagonia in the Antarctic region of Chile. And it suddenly reframed what I thought hard things were. It reframed how I decide what I could do or not. And you're an ultra runner, you understand these things. That moment where you break through the limit of realizing the only thing stopping me is my mental protection.
Yep.
My mind is protecting me from myself. I can actually break through this preset limit. And I found that was such an experience that I thought, I want to give clients and people that I love this experience to go push what they think is possible, to be expanded in their thinking about where their place was in the world. And so you've got to go to great places. So yeah, I've been able to take multiple groups through Torres del Paine in Chile. We've done the Salcantay Pass on the backside of Machu Picchu, a couple of times in Nepal. And this past fall, as a gift to myself, I took a couple of guys and we did the 3 passes circuit around Everest Base Camp. So it's a passion. I think anytime you can push that experience, it's life-changing.
And you can read about that, you can hear you say that and understand it, but until you've broken through a preset limit, I mean, it's so powerful. And I think rarely in our lives do we actually ask ourselves to do something that we don't already know we can do. Until I tried to run 31 miles, on a single trek trail through the Tillamook Forest that summited a mountain twice, I really realized after that experience, I usually don't try to do things that I honestly am not sure if I can do. And to put yourself to the test in that way and to say, well, the worst thing that can happen is I know my outer limits. And usually that's not what happens. Usually we realize that, we have these boundaries that we've assigned ourselves. And
but if you don't do that thing though, but if you don't do what you're saying right there, like choose to commit to something that might require you to be more. Like when you sign up for that race, when you decide that's on there. In fact, I'm going to, I think 1st of June, we're working on the details right now, but I'm going to put out an Everest Base Camp trek for October of 21 and be like, I'm going to put down the deposit now. Can I get that group going? Like, guys, that gives you a little more than a year and a half to plan and put your life together, to try to say to people, start planning for that experience now. Like, because then you're going to push every day beyond that what they call intuitive fence, the fence you hold yourself back from when you've got to do things you've never done before. And so what are you signing up for? What are you pushing towards?
When you sign up for a race, like a bike race, that's like 100-miler or something, do you tell people right away that you signed up, or do you wait? Because what I do is I wait until I set some milestones for myself. Like once I've done a training run of like 19 miles, then I'll tell people I've signed up for this.
Yeah. So for me, I might waffle before I sign up, but once I sign up, I do, like there's a lot of studies on what's called social outing. When you socially out yourself, the pressure of in public saying it. I remember when I was writing my first book, I didn't dare tell anybody, and it was a train wreck. The first book's kind of a disaster because I was so scared of having people telling people I was writing, because what if I didn't finish? The second book was better, but now I've discovered that there's power in keeping us committed by socially outing. And so for me, I have to say, hey, I'm going to Everest. Who wants to come with me? And that keeps me on track.
Yes.
So it's different for everybody.
Okay. So you want to go to Everest, or you just want to be a better leader. How can people get in touch with you, Mike Dauphinee?
Yeah. I mean, so social media is always a great place. So I'm always posting and I'm online. So LinkedIn, my name _Dauphinee at Instagram is there, but just my name. And we'll have a link here, md@michaeldauphinee.com, because I hear from people all the time. Just they're asking questions and I'm like, I'll answer them. At this point, I'm happy to respond and step in. But just if you're like, I have this question, I don't understand this. What's vision look like? And how do I get out of my own way? I'm like, take the first step of asking, like reach out, ask a question.
Yep. And he means it. Okay, now I'm going to socially out myself. We did this interview once, and I did
It's our second time.
Set up. This is a do-over. So I really got to thank you so much for your time. You've done this now twice with me. Super gracious of you.
My
so
pleasure.
If you believe Mike when he said he'll answer your questions, you can actually reach out to him. Believe me, take it from me, because he's now done an interview with me twice. So thank you.
I'm honored to be asked. Thanks for asking me. It means a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for watching.